save a life might be.
Hello, hi, how are you? And welcome to another podcast by George. That music that you've been listening to is music from Bob Pace, and the name of the song is What Makes a Hero, and that's going to be the subject of the podcast today. And it's a video podcast for the first time also. People have been asking for that, and don't ask me why anybody would want to look at us, but yeah, that's a request that we had on the table, and this song and this story is really well suited to video. We're going to show some video of what we're talking about today. And I'm going to throw everybody a curve a little bit. We're talking about Jason Oglesby and the big save out on the Des Moines River. But my interest in this goes back to when I used to cover the news back in 1982. And Kyle will know or remember this. In Washington, D.C. on the Potomac River. Actually, out of Washington National Airport, Air Florida Flight 90 took off, barely cleared the runway because of icy conditions and crashed into the Potomac River. And if you'll recall, if you were watching the news back then, a guy that worked for something like that in Washington, D.C., threw off his coat, threw off his boots and jumped in the river, flaming wreckage all over the place, burning oil on the river, and saved this woman who was drowning in the Potomac River. And at that time, I was working in the news business, and I told everybody, I said, look, if you're a fireman, you do heroic things, but you're trained to do that. You're experienced in that. You're supposed to do that. This guy was a government office worker, and he risked his life, and he jumped in there and saved that woman. I said, that might be the most heroic thing that I've ever seen. And it just made a huge impression on me. And then fast forward, and the date here and that I have for the situation here in Des Moines was June 30th, 2009. So I should introduce our guest. So Bob Pace is on my left. Kyle Munson, former Des Moines Register columnist, award-winning guy, worked down there 20-some years, did all of these great stories for the Des Moines Register. And the Register is a big part of this story also in 2009. So Kyle, can you pick it up and tell us what happened on June 30th?
Sure, yeah. No, I'm happy to be here, George, and I respect and love both you guys. So this is a good conversation. Thanks for having me here today. Summer of 2009, and there was construction happening down on the Riverwalk. You know, Riverwalk's been something in the capital city that's been built up for years. And there was a couple that was on their boat, and they plunged over the dam on the river. The dam has been a dangerous part of the downtown Des Moines River for a long time. And so there's this construction crew that sees this tragedy unfolding before them. And so what ends up happening on this day, as the 911 calls go out from various sources, is this man, Jason Oglesby, this construction worker, ends up dangling from a crane and reaching down and try to save this couple in the water. He's able to save the woman, but the husband drowns. And so I have a couple that day. I may or may not have been in the newsroom. I don't recall, but I do remember I had a couple of colleagues, photographer colleagues, who ended up responding to this, and one was on each bank of the river. And one of the photos that one of them shot, that Mary Chind shot that day, Mary Willie now is her name, ends up being the Pulitzer Prize winning news photo the following year.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was this dramatic rescue that gripped not only the city or not only the state. It was a front page photo for us, but it ends up traveling around the world, because here it is a rare moment of, as you were talking about with the postal worker. Here's this heroic act on a much smaller scale than a plane near a plane crash or something like that, but it was just all the emotion, and it was captured in that one photo. So you see him reaching down, dangling from the crane, and with the photo that was run, all you see is her arm sticking up from above the water. So you see how close she was to death just by the angle and the whole nature and the composition of the photo. So it was amazing, and he became this instant unwilling celebrity.
Yeah, it really struck me because I kind of lived in both worlds. I grew up hard and blue collar in a construction family, living on a farm. and grew up around guys like that. And then I lived in the white collar world. I mean, I was in corporate America, and that was the latter part of my career. But I saw this guy, and I thought, my God, what a wonderful thing that is. Because again, he wasn't paid to do that. I mean, that wasn't his job. I mean, he could very easily have said, yeah, good luck, guys. As a matter of fact, the rescuers that were there, the fire, they couldn't get her. It wasn't going to happen.
Right.
That woman was going to drown.
Right.
I mean, and the husband already had.
Yeah. And he was risking his own life, and he could have very well died. One of my former colleagues who wrote about that in the immediate wake of the rescue, former Metro columnist Mark Hansen, said Jason Oglesby, the man, he became, instantly he was known as like Indiana Jones in an orange vest. He had that orange construction worker vest on and everything. But you're right, that was really the only way to quickly get to her and try to save her life. And I remember one of her quotes was, she said, it's like he picked me up just like it was a sack of flour.
Yeah.
I mean, he was this, you can see it in the photo, such this powerful, like you're talking about, like this rough and tumble blue collar guy, huge biceps and just yanking her out of the water.
Yeah. And so I don't know, Bob, it kind of reminds me of the guys that we grew up with and the people that we knew. The thing of it is, there's this, I think Barry Melrose said about hockey players, he said, if you talk a big game in the locker room, you probably suck. if you're tough, you probably aren't.
Yeah.
If you talk like you're mean, you probably aren't. I mean, and we can see that on today's political landscape. But I mean, and Oglesby wanted no part of this.
Yeah.
And that added to the hero part of it as far as I was concerned. I mean, he turned down the media request, the celebrity. I mean, the guy probably could have made money on this stuff. I don't know. He probably could have became a famous, well-paid celebrity of some type. He said, nah, that ain't me. And the context that he put it in, remember, he died.
Yeah. He felt bad for not saving the husband, too.
Yeah. And so, and I always kind of held that close. I thought, what a great story. And I kind of compared it to this Air Florida 90 thing. And in my lifetime, those are two of the most civilian, brave acts, heroism that I've ever seen. Okay, so fast forward a few more years, and I pick up a copy of the Des Moines Register, and here's this column by Kyle Munson. The guy died?
Yeah, Jason Oglesby died. Yeah, this was April of 2017, and Jason Oglesby ends up collapsing and dying in Preston, where he was living, and he was from that area. His parents, his adopted parents, live in rural Oregon, in a small town.
Yeah, right.
So,
and I'm shocked. That ain't right.
Right.
Superman don't die. I mean, what is that? I mean, I was just, wow.
I know. So his death, and so what happens in a newsroom and something like that, his was a name. So we're talking about, 8 years after his heroic act?
Right.
He was, as we said, he became world famous, especially his image and his face. I mean, I remember being in D.C. at the Newseum, the Museum of News Coverage, and seeing my colleague's photo there enshrined as one of the Pulitzer-winning photos. I mean, that photo traveled so many places. But his name, after several years, it's not like you would go up to somebody in the street and they would necessarily know who Jason Oglesby is, right? But in a newsroom, when this name comes in of somebody dying, all of a sudden we start to recognize who this is and what this means, right?
Yeah.
And so I instantly start digging into why did he die and what happened, and start talking to his mother, Sharon Stewart, and other family and friends, and so I began to very quickly learn the more complicated story behind this guy that everybody just saw as a hero, and he was a hero, but he was also a real person like we all are, and he had struggles. I mean, he struggled with drug addiction, he struggled with so many things. And some of those demons were just woven throughout his life, and yet he was also a hero to people in very personal ways that never made it into news coverage.
Yeah.
And so he had a short life and a tragic death, and so I ended up writing something trying to capture that.
That's great. Anytime you mention the museum, I always want to also mention to folks, if you ever get a chance to go to the museum, check it out, because there's a lot of dead guys and women on that list. A lot of journalists that were killed doing war coverage and very heroic acts on their own, and they've been taking a lot of criticism, and they've been under fire, every which way.
Yes.
Yeah, the museum is a really cool place to go and get reminded of what journalists have contributed to this free and brave American society that we live in. Well, okay, so we read this column by Kyle Munson, and so this is where Bob Pace comes in, because I look at this and my God, this needs to be, I don't know, immortalized. There needs to be a movie made out of this thing, or at the very least, I get a hold of Bob and I said, Bob, I think there's a song here. And Bob, pick it up from there. So,
you just wrote a song. You emailed it to me. It was a great song. I tweaked a couple of words to it, put some music to it I thought was appropriate, and here we are.
Yeah.
It's a great song. I always say, for a hockey player, you write a pretty mean song, dude.
well, and it,
and,
you know,
and a newscaster. And
the lyrics are very closely aligned with Kyle's column, because it's a real life historic event. And then also, the music that you put to it is very interesting, because it has this dramatic crescendo building quality to it that really gives it the emotion that this particular story deserves.
now that's an interesting point, and I'll tell you why. There's two songs I've written in my life that I'm really uber proud of. One is Gospel Blues, which maybe some people have heard of, or here, maybe not. It's a really good song. I wrote it like 25 years ago, and it came to me within 30 minutes while I was passed out in the back of a bar, drunker than I should ever have been, hungover and whatnot. I wrote it on a McDonald's wrapper. I woke up in the middle of the night. The words came to me verbatim in about 20 minutes. I wrote it with a stubby-ass pencil. And that song has not been a reputation maker, but it's what I'm known for, and I'm very proud of it. Second one is this one that you wrote. The music to that one also came very spiritually. It was just like I knew immediately what that song needed. I just knew. I hardly have changed a chord since the day I did the music for it. The night that you sent that to me, I think I wrote the music for it the next morning. Tweaked it a little bit here and there to make it whatever, but the music, I mean. But and now that song is so important to me personally, and to a lot of people here, and to our band, my band. I mean, we've stretched that song from like a 3-minute song into about 12 minutes.
Right.
I made it into a Stairway to Heaven moment for me, because I love the song so much, and it communicates so much love to people out here, and it just gives me goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's one of those songs that's above, it's bigger than you and me both.
Yeah, and people just love it. I got to also tell, I mean, this is kind of funny, but I remember, I tell this story every once in a while too. Smoke on the Water, the song. Mm-hmm. John Lord, the keyboard player. I saw him interviewed one time, and he says, you can't believe the people that come up to me and want to know what that song's about. Well, the song it's a literal depiction of an event that occurred. So every now and then, people will come up to me and say, what's that song about? What is that? It's exactly what it is. It is a storytelling song. I mean, there's nothing more to it. That's really the most important part of it. But I think that the lyric line, the one that jumps out at me that is most important about it, is it could be you. It could be you too. Don't be so critical of people. And that's kind of the Jason Oglesby story. And Kyle came across this in his reporting. This guy had issues. Yeah. He had problems. He'd been to jail. I mean, some bad things had happened in this guy's life. But he saved somebody's life down there on the river. There's good in everybody.
Angels have their demons too.
Yeah, you need to recognize that.
Yeah, we're all complicated. There were friends I talked to, a single mom who was struggling to get back on her feet, and how Jason had helped her and make sure she got to work, and she was able to, to kind of go through a path of recovery. Those things where he was complicated, but he was also, I think I found him that he was consistent in his life, kind of had a big heart, even though he would stumble and he wouldn't live up to his own ideals sometimes. He was really a rock for other people, and it was just kind of it was heartening to hear that come through in the conversations I would have with these people. And then it was also, his own. It was the response to his death. Think about having, his family and his parents dealing with that, and he also left behind a daughter as well. But I think they were really heartened by the outpouring. And I know there were some ceremonies that were held on the river downtown on the bridge. Where
Yeah, Bob played down there.
Yeah, yeah.
For him. I mean, it was great.
And
What a moment that was.
Well, can maybe describe what that was like, because I think that brought a lot of comfort to the family too.
I was very nervous about that. I didn't want it to be about me or even about the song that day. I wanted it to be about the family. So we just did it. What struck me about that was going down by the dam. George was with me at the time. We looked over, and the power of that water where they were at,
Yeah.
where he actually reached in, it's frightening.
What do they call that thing? A Lowhead dam? What is that?
I think
Lowhead
that's the
dam or
right
something
Lowhead
like
Dam,
that?
yeah.
They're trying to do something about those or whatever. But and when you stand there, you can understand what happened.
I mean, if he would have slipped off that crane, it was all over. I mean, he had a hero's heart. He might have flaws as a human being, as we all do, but when push comes to shove, certain people just say, "Okay, I'm there for you."
Yeah.
And what also got me was later on, we heard that he actually helped other people rent-wise and spiritually and whatnot. That is as much of a hero as what he did
Right.
to me. And the humanity of the person. I think they ought to do a movie about this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do, because who deserves one more?
And I go back to that hard-headed sense of ethics too, like you were mentioning before. He didn't exploit this. I mean,
Right.
he could. In today's world, you can only imagine. Well, hey, he should have like a social media presence, and he should be on all the morning TV shows and whatnot.
Yeah.
But he wanted nothing to do with that. And
He recognized the crew.
Yeah.
He said, it was a crane operator. It was the other guys. All that. Well, yeah, but you were the guy hanging on the chain. I mean, come on, dude. Yeah, but no, he didn't want any part of that. Yeah.
so I respect that, where he had this personal code that said, whatever however I do or do not live up to myself, I do I treat other people certain ways, and I'm always going to do that. So he seemed like he was like one of the most morally upstanding people in terms of, just in terms of helping your neighbor, right? And
Yes.
he had a tough time with himself, but with his neighbors, with his network of people and his family, it seemed like he was there for them on a regular basis,
Yeah.
from what we can tell.
Honest to God, if they made a movie of that, Bradley Cooper would play him to a T.
That true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He would. He's got that kind of hero acting ability. Somebody like that. There's a story there. It should be a
Yeah.
book, and it should be a movie.
Well, Kyle should do a book. Maybe they'll make a movie out of it. It's a song. People can come to the gas lamp and hear it played. And you're going to do a version of it, do you think?
Sure.
I mean,
absolutely.
are you going to record a version of it on like a CD, or will you do an acoustic? Now, you've done this several different ways. I've heard you play an acoustic version and a blues version, a rock version. I mean, what version do you like the best?
Problem with me is I'm an Aquarius. I never know what I'm going to do from one day to the next.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time committing to this and then that project. I've got acoustic songs written, electric songs written, enough probably for 2 or 3 CDs. It's just a matter of finding the time to do it and organize. It's all the business stuff. I love writing songs. I love playing music for people. I hate business. Just hate it. And it boggles me. I'm almost, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm almost dyslexic when it comes to the business side of these sort of things. I have the best intentions to get these out, and I'm definitely going to record that song. Whether it be acoustic or not, I don't know yet. I hear it more electrically. I really do, because I have, in my head, it's an opus. I mean, it's just a huge 12-minute
Right.
song with parts. Tom helped me write some parts of that I think are great. Everybody contributed to the song, and now it's bigger than, like it was when you wrote it and I did some music for it. It's bigger than both of us. It's bigger than the band now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, answer your question, yes, I'm going to record it.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you're creating songs like that, you were talking about a couple of these that have really stuck with you. Does it almost feel like, when you're in that moment, does it feel like an electric current coming through your body, or how would you describe the feeling of that?
It's like somebody whispering in your ear from far away, really far away. It's like, I think I hear you, can't quite. And then you're just chasing it down and trying to write it down as quick as you can. I've written songs that have taken me years to write that are pretty good songs. I've had songs like Good Looking Older Women Are Gonna Be the Death of Me, comedy song kind of, write about what I know. I always say at 63, I can't write about good looking younger women, it'd be a little pretty creepy.
Yeah.
Good looking younger women.
Call a
Right?
cop.
Can't do that, yeah. That guy. And that song didn't take very long to write. But some have taken me a long time. I wrote a song called Brother, which is about Dwayne and Greg Allman. I wrote 30-some years ago. And it took me 4 years to write that song. So, sir, you never know how songwriting is going to go. You just don't know. If you sit down and you say, I'm going to write a song today, it's probably going to be crap.
Yeah.
You know, if you pull over by the side of the road because you hear something or you have a lyric idea and you write it down, now you have a germ of a real valid idea. And if you write it down and it hooks in your head and it stays in your head till you get home, you record it then, it's probably worth something, has some merit to it. Will it be part of this song or another song? You know, sometimes you slice them up and dice them and just see what fits where. I've had some songs where I've done that, where I put a part in the drawer. A little aside, if you don't mind.
No.
Steve Miller Band, he used to, maybe he still does, he used to have his own studio. He would go in when he had a song to record, and he'd record the whole thing, studio quality, and put it in the drawer, right? Or put it on the shelf. So when it came time for a CD, or an album back then, he just went, I like that one, that one, and he had it. And he always had material ready to go. He never had to screw around.
Yeah.
Hey, time to make another $1 million. Okay, well, here's Jungle of Love. I like that.
Yeah.
We did that one last year. And here's, you know,
Right.
Go On, Take the Money and Run. And that'll be that'll be a hit. You know, and the guy's a multimillionaire. And he's smart. He was a smart businessman and a great songwriter. You know, knew how to do a hook for a song that was very memorable.
Yeah,
Those are
I
the
agree.
best songs. Not always the best, but a lot of times the hooks are what get you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a memorable melody line. It can be a word. It could be the way the word is inflected. Baby, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Right.
I hate that song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're listening, Bachman and Turner,
Yeah.
I hate
Randy
that
Bachman.
song.
I'm
I'm just
with-
kidding. I
I'm
don't.
with you.
He was surprised
But-
that became
but
a
that
hit
little
even,
stutter
yeah.
thing became
Yeah.
the hook to the song, right?
He kind of did that as a joke and just did it on the side. He was kind of making fun of his, he's got a relative that stutters.
Yeah.
And so he threw that in there,
Yeah.
and it just took off. I mean, that's
Wow.
I mean, music is a great thing. It's great to immortalize a guy like Jason Oglesby. I mean, it's a real, almost a legend, and it deserves to be so. And I want to thank you guys for being responsible for this, because it really is deserving of being this and more.
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing us together for this conversation. These are important conversations to have. These are good people to remember.
Yeah, and look at all the crap in the journalism sphere right now. I mean, look at what we're living in.
This is
and this is something that is great, and I'm just glad to be able to have it on my podcast. So
That's right. It's
thanks
mo-
again.
Privileged
Thank
to be
you.
here. Thank you, George.
All right, Kyle Munson and Bob Pace, and What Makes a Hero, the legend, the saga of Jason Oglesby, on another podcast by George.